Lag BaOmer. What is the question about rejoicing in Lag BaOmer? The answer is, I didn't give you a sheet. I feel so sad. What is the Rabbi? Oh wait, come ahead, Goodman, come here. You don't need it. You need a rissa.
I need a coffee. That's what I need.
Okay, so go get a coffee. I'm just going to give you the maimer. Okay, what we're doing now is, everybody, every day you're going to hand me back the maimer with the question sheets. I'm going to staple them together.
I don't know how many days I'm.
Okay, we'll take it one day at a time. What is the question about rejoicing? The answer is that normally on the day of a yahrzeit, b'chlal, of your parents, of tzaddikim, there's a fast. This is brought in halacha. This is not some kind of psaza. It's a din in Shulchan Aruch that tiniest yom shemeitz bei ava ve'imei. There's a fast day that people fast on the day that they lose a parent or a rebbe. And yet when Rabbi Shimon passes away, he said there should be a simcha. How do you reconcile that? Question 9, what is normal done on a yahrzeit? Answer, you fast. Okay? So this becomes the dilemma. How do you understand that some tzaddikim pass away, it's a tinus, like Rabbi Kiva's Talmidim. Another tzaddik passes away, it becomes an infant hilul. And of course we know the answer to the question, that it depends on nigla or nistin, as we discussed at length in the earlier classes, but now we're going to learn it in the Maimon. Now, what does the Alter Rebbe introduce as a means to explain this? I don't know if you remember, the last Maimon that I taught you, I didn't teach it in order. I started in the middle, and then I went back to the beginning and the end. I tried it by topic. This Maimon, I'm not teaching by topic, I am going in order. I don't know how much of this we're going to cover. I mean, I'd love to finish this Maimon, but I'm not going to rush through it. We're going to learn it till the end of the school year. The Alter Rebbe changes the subject, and the Rebbe goes in that direction. We find in a pasuk that there is a concept of being a oimid, standing in one place, and there's a concept of being a mahalach, being in motion, moving from one place to another. Being a mahalach, being in motion, is considered a higher madrega than oimid standing in one place. Who's standing in one place? Malachim in Gan Eden. Who's standing in one place? Neshamas Yisrael in Gan Eden. Who's considered moving? Who's considered growing? Who's considered from going a lower level to a higher level? Who's considered a mahalach and a neshama in this world? So in order to address the question of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai making a Yom Tov out of his yahrzeit rather than a fast day, which would be more typical, the Alter Rebbe redirects us to this new subject of mahalach and oimid. And the way this is going to work is we're going to forget about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai for a while, okay? We're going to be talking about angels and souls. We'll get back to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai whenever we get back there. We're going to be talking now about this question of mahalach and oimid. Standing still versus being in motion. That malachim lamayla, neshamis lamayla are standing in one place. A neshama comes into this world, he becomes a mahalach. Now, question 11. You with me? You with me? You have a pen? Good, you're writing answers? Wonderful. Question 11. Are angels really standing still? And the answer is, of course not. Angels are constantly in motion. Rabbi Silberberg. Angels are constantly in motion. It says in Maimorim that they're moving from one world to another. Malachim daven, what we do. 3 times a day they daven. They say Kaddish, they say Baruch, depending on what level. And every time they daven, they go from one level. The Malachim are constantly moving. They're growing and growing. It says in Kabbalah's Svarim, it's brought in Chassidus, that every neshama has 3 aliyahs per day. Shachas is an aliyah, Minchas is an aliyah, Ma'ariv is an aliyah. Shabbos you have 4 because of Musaf. Yom Kippur you have 5 because of Ne'ilah. On your yahrzeit you have a huge aliyah. And yet all of that is called standing still. So Malachim are in incredible growth. Or to say it in more religious terms, Malachim serve God. Neshamas serve God. They're busy. They're not bored. They're not waiting for something to do. Malachim and Neshamas are busy serving Hashem. Some are serving Hashem because they stand in front of Him in awe. Some are serving Hashem because they're going on various different kinds of missions. But Malachim and Neshamas are serving Hashem. And yet it's called standing still. 12. Are souls actually moving more rapidly than they are? Of course not. They're moving much slower. The neshamas down here make one baby step forward and one baby step backwards. We make mistakes. We miss opportunities. We get lazy. We fall into bad habits and all kinds of other stuff. Right? But we're fighting. We're fighting.
Well, they don't have the Torah, so
they don't have mitzvahs. They do have Torah. They don't have mitzvahs. They don't have mitzvahs. They have Torah. And they understand it better than we do. And moreover, Adam Levi, they have davening. They have tefillah. Malachim neshamas daven. They can't put on tefillin, they can't eat kosher, they can't make kiddush on Friday night, they can't put up a mezuzah, mitzvahs they don't have. But Torah they have, and even Avodah they have. So what's the logic? Why are we considered mahalech in motion, and they're considered oimid? When you go out, close those doors, please. Okay, that's a good answer. It's a pretty correct answer. The answer is because growth isn't measured by how much you grow. Growth is measured by how much you exceed your own expectation. Growth is measured in how much you exceed your own normal. Malachim make huge growth spurts. But why not? Definitely it's harder. They live in a holy world. In the world in which they live, what they're doing is as natural as breathing air. Neshamas Lamaila also making huge strides in Avodah and getting close to the Eibishter. But they're living in a world which is so supportive of it that the way they move is almost predetermined by their environment. I said this to you yesterday, and it's a whole conversation which needs to be had, and to be sure, I know where the conversation is found, but I never really thought it through till the end. If you were a malach, if you were in a Neshama in Gan Eden, you would feel like you have free will, and you're exercising it in your davening, you're exercising it in your learning. You know, however you would say getting up in the morning, you know, they don't sleep, Lamaila, yeah? But the Gan Eden closes at night, from 12 at night, whatever, from dusk to midnight, the doors of Gan Eden are closed. At midnight, the doors of Gan Eden open, and there's a concept of time. But they get up, they do their work. But it's so efficient, they're so good at it. They're perfect at it. Why? Because they're living in a place where there's not, this is their reality. There's no Yitzhara.
So why are they exceeding their expectations?
It's not. And that's why it's called standing still. They're making huge strides. They're going from a level to a level. Today understand Hashem so much, to understand so much, and so on and so forth. But it's almost like as if somebody else is doing it for them. It doesn't feel to them like automatic. You know, it doesn't seem like a dream. When a person dreams, you can't move. You know what happens in a dream? You're laying in bed and you're seeing a vision. Did you ever? Someone once pointed this out to me. When you dream, you don't dream in video, in movies. You dream in stills, in slides. There's a guy a mile away, and then he's 100 feet away, and then he's 10 feet away, and then you want to wake up, you want to run away from him, right? Because he's a boogeyman. The minute you want to run away from him, you wake up, and then you want to go back into the dream to get the rest of the story. Sorry, sir, you woke up, you can't get the rest of the story. When you dream, you're stuck in bed. Like the famous Chalma story, Ich lieg in bed. When you dream, the world moves around you, you're stuck in your place. And it's happening to you, you have no control. You feel it, you experience it, but you can't react to it. That's why it's frightening. That's why you wake up. It's called in the Zohar, the Klippas are laughing at you. They're mocking you. You're trapped. There is such a concept by Neshamas outside of Gufim. It's called Chibut HaKever. It's called Kaf HaKela. When you get to Gan Eden, you don't feel like you're in a car wash and your car is on neutral and you're just going on the belt. That you feel when you're stuck in the grave, before the body decomposes. When a person passes away, the neshama stays with the guf until the guf comes apart, unless you're a very big tzaddik. So now you're stuck. So the malachim come along and do na kish kish, you know, they make fun of you. You're trapped. It's called chibut hakever. You can't move. You're experiencing things, and you don't feel like you have any master over it. Once you get to Gan Eden, you feel like you're davening. You feel like you're choosing to learn. But the environment around you is so supportive of what you're doing that it's called oimet. You're not going anyplace. You're making huge strides, but it's all so predetermined, you're not going anyplace. And the neshama down here makes baby steps. And yet the baby steps that the neshama makes down here is considered in motion, because the neshama is exceeding its limitations. It's called tshuva. I was sitting in a car. I went to the Wrightport funeral on Thursday. And on the way back, I went back with a neighbor. He's a good guy. He's almost my age. He's a businessman. But he loves Torah, he loves Chassidus, he's a very sincere man. So we were talking about we were yeshiva versus the Machon today, with the cell phones and the technology. And he was saying it's impossible. I mean, he's almost my age, which means my oldest child is 34. His oldest child is probably 30. You know what I'm saying? A few years apart. When the Rebbe danced with the kids by Tzivas Hashem, I was after Bar Mitzvah, and he was one of those kids who shook the Rebbe's hand. He was a 12-year-old, 11 years, a few years younger than I am. And he was talking about how impossible it is. You know, we had tests. But today, his children, with the cell phones and the computers and the access and so on. So he was very pessimistic about it. So I said to him, but you know what we could be in our generation? We could be Balei Tshuva. And his face lit up. For a guy to grow up pure and remain pure as an adult, if he's normal, could it happen? I think it could. But it's so unlikely. For a bacher to go through the system, that dirtiest of words, and live in this world and remain pure of mind and body until it's chasana, of course it can happen because the Eibishter gives us free will. But it's so much harder than it was 100 years ago. You can't even imagine it. I said to him, innocent we're not going to be, but we could choose to be righteous. We could choose to do tshuva. And I talked to him about Achei, my favorite subject. You know, boys here choose not to have access to their cell phone. No one's forcing them. And the only reason it works is because they're choosing it. The minute you force them, it's out the window. He loved that idea. We live in a generation of tshuva. What does tshuva mean? I have a yetzer hara. I have made mistakes. I fight with my yetzer hara, but I'm going to win. Now, I may not win always, but I win as often as I can. And if I'm fortunate, I'll win always. Innocent, we're not. Naive, we're not. But we overcome. When a person does tshuva, when a person has tests and wins his tests, either on the level of today I win and tomorrow I'll lose, or on the level that I'm going to win from now on, which is, of course, a much, much higher level. That's Mahalech. Neshamas and Gan Eden don't know that. Malachim Lamau don't know that. They're moving much faster than we are. But they're living in automatic pilotville. You understand? They're living in a world that's so supportive. There's no cell phones upstairs. There's no Twitter. I'm not even up to date to what you're supposed to say at this point. Those in Yonim don't exist up there. And therefore the neshama in its baby steps is called the Mahalach, and the Malach and the neshama Lamaila in its quantum leaps is called the Neimet, standing still. You with me? Next question. What illustration did I use to help explain it? And my source is from Igeres Hatshuva Pedek Yud Beis. And the answer to that question is this: again, the last chapter of Igeres Hatshuva. It's a very interesting last chapter. It almost feels weird that the Alter Rebbe puts it there. The illustration is that, assuming what Torah says, that the earth is standing still, and the sky, the heavens are rotating around the earth. The sun is reversing. Every 24 hours, the sun makes a complete revolution of the earth. It's called the Galgal Achei. Galgal means the orbit that encompasses the whole universe. Every 24 hours, there's a complete rotation. The earth stands still and the whole universe is spinning around it. That's what Torah holds. And every 24 hours, the sun makes a complete rotation of the earth. The speed of the sun is, I don't know, millions of miles per minute or per second. Fried says faster than the speed of light.
That would make the stars like much farther than the sun be moving.
Even faster.
Like 1,000 times the speed of light.
Right, but the point is, it's not the stars that are moving, it's the space. The stars are actually standing still. Galgal, no. And koichav, in other words, the physical laws and the physical limitations do with physical things. According to Torah, it's not the bodies that are moving, it's the space itself. It's the sky. The orbits, as it's translated in English. The speed is far, far beyond the speed of light, but it's not the bodies actually traveling that fast. They're fixed in space. Space is rotating. Space is made up of units. This even is recognized by physicists. But they associate the units of space to matter. You know, one of the weirdest things about, you know about dark matter, right? They have found complete galaxies with 0 stars. Now, isn't a galaxy all about stars curving the space around itself because of gravity? So how could there be a galaxy without stars? So their answer is dark matter. That there is material there, that there is actually matter, we just don't see it. And that matter has a great gravitational pull, and it creates a galaxy. And the way they know this is, they'll watch light do the curvature thing. The light won't go in a straight line. Yeah, and there's no matter. They don't see anything. The curvature tells them there's a galaxy here, but there's no stars in it. I believe, and I don't know if this is true, that al pi Torah, there is no such thing as dark matter. It's space itself. The Eibishter made space in pieces, and the space is moving, and the light is curving around the galaxy. It's not because there's gravitation creating the galaxy, but the Eibishter created space in a unit called the Galga. There's nothing inside it. There's just no planets, no stars, no matter. But in any case, this is not important. What's important is that according to Torah, that the universe is rotating around the earth, and the earth is sitting still and not budging, which is what the Rebbe writes, based on a pasuk. The man who understood the science the best teaches the Torah in the most radically unscientific way. It's just so interesting. The Rebbe. I told you yesterday, Nissim Mindel wrote an article about the earth. And he wrote about the rotation, that the earth is spinning. Every 24 hours, the earth travels 24,000 miles. It spins itself. And the axis and the tilt. Right? Why do we have summer and winter? Because the earth goes like this. So the Rebbe crossed out that entire section and wrote 3 words on the margin. It says in the pasuk, "Va'aretz la'olam amedus," which means the earth stands forever. And the Rebbe translated it. The earth doesn't budge. Now there's so much evidence for the earth's axis and for the earth's tilt, but the Rebbe says, nope, the sky is moving, the earth is standing still. Azedus apitera. Eat your heart out. It's just, how do people who respectively want to disagree say, it's very, very, very unlikely, but that's what the Rebbe holds, the Torah holds, and if Torah holds it, it's emes. But anyway, the point is, if the sun is traveling at that speed, a very interesting observation emerges. You're standing in a sunny day, and there is shadow, right? And as you get closer to midday, the shadow is going to get darker and narrower. As you get further from midday, the shadow is going to get longer and less dark, correct? At the very beginning of the day, at the very end of the day, when the suns are at the edges of the sky, you're going to have very, very long shadows, but they're not going to be very, very crisp. So the Alter Rebbe asks a question, how many miles does the sun move for your shadow to move an inch? Millions and millions of miles. So the Rebbe says that's a mashal. When we do a tiny act down here, the skies move millions of miles. We may be doing tiny little things, but because of our circumstances and because of our challenges, and because we really have free will, the small little steps we make when juxtaposed against what's happening in the spiritual and supernal and lofty heavens is millions of miles. And on this basis, the Alter Rebbe brings, this is a discussion found in all the Rabbeim Chassidus. It's a classic idea in Chassidus that Malachim and the Shabbos and Gan Eden are called standing still, and the Neshama in this world, in spite of all of its difficulties, are called being in motion, it's moving. Okay? Are we good? Are we good? I need one person to tell me yes. Okay, one person spoke. So we're going to start 4 lines into page 672. Hello, look inside, please. 4 lines into page 72. I'm sorry. You don't have a maimish? You don't have a maimish. You know what my problem is? I know your name is Shnei Zalman.
Yeah.
But I'm going to need help with your last name.
Hold up.
Once you say it, they say, idiot, you knew that. You'll give me back each day Jemima with the questions. Now listen. V'tam hadover. The reason for this fact, please look inside. Shamalach and the Kroyim aimed in that angels are called standing still. And a neshama down here, that's making baby steps and almost walking around and around in a circle, is called in motion. Angels are measured and limited. In other words, as great as they are, they're in a box, in what we would call in Pesach Maimonim, in a mitzrayim, in a narrowness, and they never exceed it, they just complete it. And the Rebbe breaks up the limitation of malachim into 4 points, okay? I want you to do me a favor, okay? You all have your own mime and you have your name on it, and you're all holding pens, right? I want you to look on the line that begins with the word chomer. You see it? Yeah? And underline the two words, umitzad hachomer, the third and fourth words on that fifth line, on that sixth line, yeah? Now the next line starts with the word keneged. You see, it says v'chein hatzura v'hanefesh. Underline those three words. Okay? Now the next line, shagam, it says hakoyach halaki hanimshach behem. Underline those four words. Okay? Now 2 lines after that where it says zois, the third and the fourth line say oifa and hashpa. Underline those 2 words. What I'm showing you is that Rebbe is going to give us 4 parts of the limitation of a malach. Part number 1, it's guf. Part number 2, it's neshama. Part number 3, it's connection to Hashem. And part number 4, what it does in giving others. And he's going to argue that as great as an angel is limited because his guf. The words mitzad ha'chayma means his guf. Hatzur v'nefesh means his neshama. Hakeach eligi hanimshach mem means how closely connected to the Eibush that he is. And Eifa Nashba means what malachim are busy doing. Okay, so it's 4 points. Each of these 4 points are going to argue in a slightly different way that a malach is limited. Let's go back to the beginning. V'yadua, it is known, I am 5 lines into the maimer, in the middle of the line. V'yadua, it is known. You with me? Rabbi K. Yeah, your name is now from now on Rabbi K. Shamalachim malachim have a body and a soul. Now, just for fun, and maybe not just for fun, but also for reality, this is actually a machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramban. I know a guy who went into Yechidus for his bar mitzvah. The Rebbe started asking questions about his pilpul. You know, a guy says a pilpul and a maimed. And the worst thing can happen to any yeshiva bachar, God forbid, the Rebbe should test him. But the Rebbe used to test the kids. He went into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe tested him, and he got confused. He said a pilpul, a Rambam, and a Ramban, and he got it mixed up, and the Rebbe got frustrated with him. Ramban with a nun, not Ramban with a mem. There's a Ramban with a Rambam with a mem, and Ramban with a nun. Maimonides and Nachmanides. Maimonides and Nachmanides, Rambam and Ramban argue whether malachim have a guf or not. The Ramban is a makubal. And the Ramban says, of course, malachim have a guf. And he brings it out from a postulate that the guf of a malach is made up either of fire or of gas, whatever that means. The Rambam, with a mem, who is a philosopher, says, malachim have no guf at all. And sometimes my mother will bring this argument that Ramban says malachim have a guf, the Rambam says malachim don't have a guf. And sometimes you'll learn in a maimer where the maimer will say, we all know that the Rambam and the Ramban argue, but you know what, even according to the Rambam, they really also have a guf. The Maimorim hold that the Rambam really also agrees that malachim have a guf. The reason that Rambam says they have no guf is because the guf has no tfisas makam. The guf doesn't define them. They're defined only by their nefesh. In other words, we really believe that unless you're God, there's got to be form. And if there's form, you can call it a body. That Rambam says they have no guf. In the language of philosophy, in the world of philosophical exactitude and preciseness, you don't have to identify the malach as having a guf. The Mekubalim, who are even more precise, they say that the malachim have a guf. So one maimer will tell you that the Rambam and the Ramban are arguing, and then the second maimer will say, nah, they really not arguing. The Rambam really agrees. It's just from his perspective, there's no inyan of guf. Anyway, according to this maimer, for sure, malachim have a guf and a neshama. Okay, so I'm reading it again. Yedua, it is known, malachim in bali choyme v'tzura, malachim have a body and a soul. U'mitad ha'choyme shebehem, because of their body, hareim b'mido u'gevul, they're measured and they're limited. And he brings it out from a Gemara. Keneged the kasuli achayis keneged kulam v'chulu, that the heels of the malachim are as big as the whole universe. Doesn't matter the details. When you say that the heels of the malachim are big as the whole universe, you're shocked by how big they are. Okay? The Rebbe is shocked by the fact that we're defining them as having a size. When you define anything as having a size, doesn't matter how big or little it is, that's a limit. Because if it was infinite, it wouldn't have a side, it wouldn't have a relativism. The very fact that you compare a malach to the space of the universe, and the space of the universe, even Goyim acknowledge, even modern science today acknowledges, is finite, so the malach becomes finite by association. See, yesterday, the malachim are so big, their heel It's the size of the whole universe, yeah? It's a lot, it's big, it's massive, it's gigantic. But it's limited. The malachim have a gvul, malachim have a guf. You know how far it goes? It goes as far as to say that there's a Gemara in the Masechta Chagiga, which is of course the source of this Gemara also, footnote 6, that tells the story about a very famous malach. This malach's name is Matat. Matat. Rashi says in Pashas Mishpatim that Matat Mem Tes Reish Vav Nun is Begematria Shaddai, Shin Dal Yud. Same Gematria is one of the Eibishter's names. Tishmi B'Kirbe. That Matat said something in the Bezdin Shal Mailo which constituted an admission or a statement to the effect that there's a lack of Hashgacha Pratis. Hashem is not fully in charge. So the Gemara says they carried this Matat guy out of the Bezdin Shal Mailo and they gave him 60 lashes of fire. Shitin Pulsa Denura, 60 lashes of fire. You listening? One of the most important Malach Matat is in charge of the universe. He's not in charge of godliness, he's in charge of he's in charge, he's the Sadeh Shalela. He's the most important guy when it comes to the external world. Yiddishkeit's not his department. Keeping the rivers flowing and the ocean in its place and the sun coming up in the morning, that's his department. He's the Mal, he's called Sadeh Shalela. When it comes to Olam, Machon, Hell, worldliness, he's in charge. And he made a statement which constituted a lack of belief in Hashgacha Pratis, that Hashem is not always in charge. He said something to that effect, and they gave him 60 makas. So the Rebbe has a maimer, which I actually contemplated teaching because it's the first Rosh Hashanah maimer that the Rebbe said, but I didn't do it, that if you give a guy makas for saying something, he has to have b'chira chovshus. And the Rebbe goes into the whole question, do angels have free will or do angels not have free will? We always assume they don't. And Tanya says that they don't. If they took this guy out of the Beis Rivka for making a statement and they gave him makas, is a simon that he has free will. So the question about free will notwithstanding, it doesn't bother me so much. What is the point of this Gemara and this Hasidic flushing out? Malach is pretty good. Malach is a smart guy. Malach is a very Hasidic guy. All the malachim are in Tomchet. There's no Achei Temimim. Only Tomchet. Everyone's holy. But they're limited. And the limitation doesn't only mean they can move this fast and not faster. They can this much space and not more space. The limitation consists also of how much they relate to Hashem. And when Matat makes a statement which indicates a lack of amunah, a tiny lack of betachan in the complete hashgacha of the Eibishter over the world, and he gets malchus for it, you don't have to say that Matat made a mistake. You could say that this is the limit of Matat's achdus. Matat cannot know the unity of God better because the Eibishter made it with Amdid of Agbala. You see what I'm saying? The Rebbe asks the question, if you give a guy malchus for making a misstatement, you have to say he has free will. And the Rebbe doesn't really answer. The Rebbe gives an offer. He brings tiny Perek Lamed Tes. The Malachim don't have free will. And the Alter Rebbe himself writes, the Malachim of Yitzida don't have free will. And Malachim don't have intelligence. And Malachim of Bria do have intelligence. They have intelligence, they have free will, which is what the Rambam writes. But intelligence doesn't, according to the Rebbe, even being smart doesn't give you free will. To have free will, you have to have an essence. You have to have a Yechida. And Malachim for sure don't have that. But one of the, I'm sorry.
Was that a glitch in the system?
It wasn't a glitch in the system. The system was glitched. The Eibishter made the system perfect to a certain degree. And Matat was as perfect as he could be. His perfection could not exceed that. So he was going to say that Hashem is not a complete balabayas because as perfect as he was, his avodas Hashem was defined by that exactly. So why did they beat him up for it? Why did they give him malchus? This is his limitation. What do you want from him? What do you want from him? I don't think they beat him up to punish him. They beat him up to teach us a lesson and to purify him. But this is the limitation of a malach. Okay, there's a whole lumdus around this, and I'm telling you honestly, I've known about this lumdus for 25 years. I never really worked it through in my mind. I don't know how to explain this, that Rambam writes malachim do have free will. Tanya writes some malachim don't, and some malachim do. It's all based on the issue of reason. That in order to have free will, you have to be intelligent. The Rebbe B'Klal holds that smart doesn't give you free will. Smart makes the ability to see which is a better choice and which is a worse choice. If you're smart and you figure which is a better choice and which is a worse choice, and you make the better choice, you didn't make the choice, the thing made the choice. You just observed it. Free will is very, very, very deep. And if malachim don't have free will, why are they getting petch? And the Teretz says the petch is not a oynesh, it's a kapara, it's a cleansing. So malachim have a guf. And the raya is that they're limited in size. You know how limited they are in size? Their ankle is the size of the universe. They're big chevre. They're big chevre, but finite chevre. And then you have this Gemara that brings out that a malach's limitation is not only his size, his connection to Hashem. A malach can make a statement that, considering who he is, he should be ashamed of himself for saying, to some degree, you know, what Cain said very famously, les din v'les dayin. There's no judgment, there's no judgment. He's not doing anything. He lets the world run free. And he was punished for it. Whether you want to call it a punishment, or you want to call it a correction, whether you want to say he has free will, or he has intelligence, these are all questions that deserve attention. But the Rebbe says you should know a malach has a guf, and the guf limits him. Number 2, v'chein hatzura v'hanefesh alehem. The form and the soul of a malach is gamkein be'eshiyur v'hagbola. It's also measured and limited, which I think would mean that because the guf is limited, the capacity of the neshama within that guf is limited accordingly. Which means when Matat, using that muscle that I just gave you, made a statement, which is bedakas dedakas in a very fine way, the opposite of achtos, and he got 60 lashes of fire for it, whether those lashes were a punishment because we consider him having free will, or those lashes were a cleansing because he doesn't really have free will, or really you could say it's a combination of both, that chesaron in his emunah is a product of the limitation of his guf, and it's also a product of the limitation of his neshama, for a very, very simple thing. What would happen if you put an infinite soul into a finite body? What would happen if you put an infinite soul into a finite body? The body would explode. Can't hold it. So if the guf isn't full, you could measure the size of a malach in physical miles. Physical miles. A malach could say something which is considered a chassan and achas Hashem, and he gets punished for it. You have to say that the neshama of the malach, which is in that guf of the malach, is limited. Otherwise, they don't fit together. You know the story? Huh? Say that again. Our souls are packaged. The essence of the soul is in the body, but it's hidden. The level of the soul which is revealed in the body cannot be stronger than the body itself. This is a gewaldige kamais. I heard the story, then I saw the story in the Sefer. There was a Yid named the Yismach Moshe. His everything was Moshe. Yismach Moshe. Yismach Moshe's last name was Teitelbaum. Now, what does that name mean to you? There was one of the greatest gedolim of this post-Holocaust world was the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Yossi Paltiel, right? He passed away in 1979. I don't think you remember him, right? I was 13 years old when he passed away, so for you to remember him, you must have been in your previous lifetime, 67 and losing your teeth. Yeah, you don't remember him. His last name was Teitelbaum. His Rebbe Sheyichis was his wife. She was a Halberstamm. Halberstamm is Tzanz, which is one of the biggest Chassidus, with many, many, many branches. His nephew was the Kloisenberger Rebbe. The Kloisenberger Rebbe was Halberstamm. In other words, the Kloisenberger Rebbe's father was the brother of the Satmar Rebbetzin. But his last name was Teitelbaum. Teitelbaum was also a Rebbe Shemishpach. He's Ben Achaben from the Yismach Moshe of Ileruv. And I know people today, even Lubavitchers, who were Teitelbaums, that are descendants of the Yismach Moshe. The Satmar Rav had one daughter, and he has no Einiklach, Nebuch. Satmar Rebbe passed away. He lost his daughter. He had no hemshech. Anyway, so Yismach Moshe was the Talmud of the Choyze. He lived in the times of the Alter Rebbe. He was the first Rebbes in Hungary. The two first Rebbes in Hungary were the Yismach Moshe and the Kalever Rebbe, the Kalever, who was very into singing. The Yismach Moshe had a schus. I don't know what the schus was. He did something really, really special. And what he did was so special that min hashamayim, from heaven, he was told that he deserves a schar. He deserves to be rewarded for it. And he was asked to pick what he wants the schar to be. What do you want as a reward for whatever it was? It probably says in the Sefer what he did. I heard the story as a brachayet, and then I actually saw it in the Sefer. So the Yismach Moshe said, I want as my reward for this wonderful thing that I did, that I should experience the Yiras Hashem of the Rambam, the Yiras Shamayim of the Rambam. Now you go to Yeshiva University to think that the Rambam was a centrist, was an academic, was a professor, was a scholar. Rambam was a tzaddik alaki. The Mittler Rebbe writes in a Maimon that the Rambam did not understand himself how great he was. The Rambam didn't know himself how great he was. The Mesicher Maggid told his son of Avram the angel on his deathbed, learn Rambam every day because it's a school for Yiras Shamayim. I believe the Rebbe never said this publicly. The Rebbe gave 3 reasons for why I did that kind of live with the Rambam. I think the 4th one is this tzavot. The Rebbe knew about it. The Mesicher Maggid said, learning Rambam every day is a school for Yiras Shamayim. Rambam. Not Rashi, not Ravid, not Rashba, Rambam, Mr. Logic. Because the Rambam was a tzaddik eliki. So the Yisma Moshe was told that he has a schus, and he asked what he wants for as a schar, and he said, I want to experience the Yishma Rambam. And he was told min Hashamayim that if he would experience the fear of heaven of Rambam, he would push it expire. He would die. Like Nazman Avi, he couldn't handle it. So they said, we'll give you something less. You'll experience the Rambam's Yiras Shamayim while he was doing an operation. The Rambam became a doctor at the end of his life for many, many years. And he saw patients all day and all night. The Rambam has a letter where he describes how he practiced medicine. The guy didn't have a life. He saw every patient each day. He never made you wait till tomorrow. There were no appointments. You got in line and he didn't stop till everybody saw him. And if you couldn't afford, he paid for your medicines also. He was like, explain the Rambam. You know, the Adayeh Mazeh, doctors swear what's called a Maimon Adiyah oath. When you become a doctor, you have to swear that you're going to use medicine only to heal, not to hurt. So there's 2 oaths, and you have a choice. If you're a religious person, you make the tefillah. The Rambam wrote a prayer, how you're supposed to practice medicine. And there's another oath which is called the Hippocratic oath, I think it's called. Hippocratic oath, which is another man who was more of a secular philosopher. Anyway, so the Rambam did surgery. However he did surgery in the 12th century, exactly, but it looked like, I don't know. But when the Rambam was operating on a person, he was cutting a person's plumbing open and fixing him. He was paying attention to the person, not to the Eibishter. So his Yiras Hashem was in the background. So they told the Yismach Moshe to experience the Yiras Hashem that the Rambam felt on a regular basis is too much. But the Yiras Hashem that he felt when he was doing an operation, you could feel. So they inspired him. They gave him this, and he fell to the ground. He physically fell down. Now the Yismach Moshe was a tzaddik gomur. Yismach Moshe was a godel shebekdeilim. And he couldn't hold in his guf the yira that the Rambam felt when he wasn't even thinking about the Eibishter. What's the point? The power of the soul could knock the body down. For the soul to come into the body and the body to remain standing, either the body has to be very strong, or the soul has to be very adapted. It's very limited. The neshama is limited to the guf. So if the guf is limited, as per this Gemara, as per the story that I just told you about Matat, that they gave him makas for saying something which was considered hepech ha'achtas. And you don't have to say that he made a mistake. You have to say this is his limitation. A malach is limited because of his body, and therefore he's limited in relation to Eibishter. Automatically you have to say his neshama is limited, because the neshama goes into that body. They have to match. You got it? So we just learned, just for special Brooklynese today, 2 stuffs. Okay, we learned 2 stuffs. Number 1, the guf of a malach is limited. And number 2, the neshama of the malach.